Okay, we're going to have a little look at our zipper overlay. So you've got two ways of doing this. You can either cut using the template. So the template has little dotted lines in the middle which give you the zipper aperture. Ideally, if you're going to do that, it's easier if you print this twice and stick them together. So you've got this the dotted lines on there which give you the zipper aperture. If you find that difficult to do, once you just cut the main shape, and then on the reverse, if you mark a line that's 3/8 of an inch from the top straight edge, so not the edge with that sort of bump on it, and mark a line across from one side to the other that's 3/8 of an inch from the top straight edge, and then another line that is 3/4 of an inch down from that top straight edge, what will give you is a gap that's 3/8 of an inch in between. If you mark the central point, so you can see that I've actually got a little pencil mark on the central point, and then measure 4.5 inches out each way from that central point, you will get a 9-inch aperture that's 3/8 of an inch high. And that will give you, it depends if you, some people find it easier to cut from a template, some people find it easier to cut freehand, but you do, or to cut with a ruler, but you do need to have that aperture cut before you fit this to your bag exterior. So I'm just going to find another piece of paper because I had a piece of paper I was using for my glue. Oh, there it is. I knew I didn't put it on the floor. Okay, let's just pop that out of the way. So I have my main exterior piece of fabric, and this is what I'm using for this. Now, the first thing that you can do, that I should have shown you before, is to remove any excess faux leather that you've got. I'm also going to cut off all my ends because I've tied them, but I haven't actually trimmed off the ends. So just to get them out of the way. Yeah, if you've got excess faux leather around the outside of your design, you can just trim that away just so that it's not too thick and bulky. So I've just removed any excess there. Now we should be able to use a ruler and a chalk marker. We're going to do a line that is 3/4 of an inch from the top straight edge. Now I think I've already marked that at some point. I think I might have got carried away with myself, but it's faded a bit, so I'm just going to redo it. So 3/4 of an inch from the top straight edge, and if you haven't already still got a little mark where you had your central line when you did your applique, you can just remark it so that 6 1/4 inches in from the shorter sides. So I've already, yeah, just double check that is all right. And then we're going to use some more of that wonderful spray adhesive, or glue stick if you prefer. So I'm just going to pop that onto, I've put my spray adhesive down now. No, I haven't. Pop that onto a piece of paper so I don't get spray adhesive all over my desk. Right sides down, and I'm just going to lightly spray the back. Then I'm going to lift it off that bit of paper and move the paper. I'm going to carefully position it centrally, and I've got central marks on the back of my overlay along that 3/4 of an inch line. Now, if you're worried about it not sitting straight, or you think that it's gone a bit wonky because it's quite flimsy, take the piece that you cut out and pop it back into the middle, and you'll find that, in fact that's the wrong way around, you can then kind of sit the faux leather around. Now you can see I've stuck that down, but look, you can see there's a gap at the bottom there. So I can just lift that up and make sure that it's sitting, that the overlay is sitting flush around the piece that I cut out. So that sits nicely, no major gaps. So I can now take my cut out bit out, and I know that my zipper overlay is perfectly in shape. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stitch around the outside edge, so not around the aperture, just around the outside edge. And we're going to do that again in exactly the same way. We're going to leave long threads top and bottom, and we're going to very carefully stitch. So I'm just going to, it doesn't look quite right to me. I've got a bit that's not quite on that 3/4 inch line, so I'm just jigging it to make it right. That's better. And again, we're just going to stitch all the way around the outside, take it slowly, and you're going to stay 1/8 of an inch away from the outside edge. If your faux leather feels like it's feeling a bit stretchy, you can use your awl to hold it down. This is actually fairly thick faux leather that I'm using for this, so it's not too stretchy. Just for the overlay, it's what matches the applique, so it was a scrap that I had left over from something else. When you get towards the ends, go slowly so that you can get around those curves nicely. You don't want to go over the edge, don't want to fall off the end. Take it slowly around these curves to get a really nice curved line of stitching. You don't want jaggedy edges, that just looks untidy. If you need to hand crank around the curves, then do so. That's just, you know, I'd rather see you hand crank and get it right than go whizzing off with your foot on the pedal. I know not every machine is uber sensitive. When some machines seem to have two speeds, very fast and stop. So I know a couple of people I've seen struggle with just sewing one stitch at a time. Not obviously when I'm doing sew alongs, because I can't see what your machine's doing, but when I've done classes, some people's machines just don't have the same sort of sensitivity on the foot pedal. Or maybe it's just that they're heavy footed, I don't really know. But in theory, driving a machine should be a bit like driving a car. If you take your foot off the accelerator, it's going to go slower. That's the theory anyway. Seems quite sensible in my head. Again, going slowly around this end curve, lifting your foot just to be able to ease yourself around. And lifting your foot is better than just kind of moving the fabric as you stitch, because there's less likely of stretching if you lift your foot as opposed to just moving the fabric. I know if you can, I mean, I can move the fabric so I can go around that curve, but you can see already that's starting to pull up there, so it's starting to stretch as I do that. Whereas if I lift the foot, much less likely to get stretching. Again, landing in the same hole as I started in, pulling my work out, taking the two top threads through to the bottom, and tying them off. Okay, so that's our zipper overlay attached. But you can see we're not going to put any room for a zipper in there, have we? So we do need to make another additional bit of cutting. And I'm going to use my craft knife, and I'm just going to cut down centrally down the aperture, so just inside, not through the actual overlay that you've just sewn on. So you can see I've just literally cut from one end to the other, essentially. So we're not cutting the overlay. I've just gone through the back fabric. I'm going to turn it over, and using my scissors, and I can lift up the main fabric, and I'm going to trim it away almost, I guess I'm probably about 3/16 of an inch away from the line of stitching, and you can see my stitch line now. If I hold that up, you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm trimming away this, which is the exterior fabric, so that what I can actually see there is the edge of my overlay. So from the front you won't see any of the exterior fabric, you'll only see the overlay. So I'm just going to continue all the way around, trimming that away. When I come to the bottom, I don't need to trim away all of this in that bottom lump where we're going to put our handmade tag, just enough so that it's not visible within the zipper aperture that we've created on our overlay. Sometimes you do have to pull it up a little bit because you've used spray adhesive, so it may well be stuck, but you should be using temporary spray adhesive, so it should be able to be moved quite easily. It just needs to be pulled apart. You just need to be really careful that you're not cutting into the overlay fabric that you're using, the overlay faux leather. It's just the main fabric that you're removing from behind the overlay. It doesn't even have to be particularly tidily cut, it just needs to be so that you can't see it from the front. So we go all the way around. Sometimes I find this easier with a smaller pair of scissors than a bigger pair of scissors, but it just depends what I've got on hand, I think. It's all go here today. I've got a husband working from home. I've got my daughter finishing her coursework on college online. So there we go, look. So now we can't see any of this exterior fabric through our zipper aperture. We just have a beautiful hole where our zipper will go in. But before we put our zipper in, we're going to fit our handmade tag. So I'll be back to show you how to do that shortly.